Eleanor Grayson sat in her armchair, the one with the faded floral pattern that had cradled her through decades of joys and sorrows. The living room smelled faintly of lavender and old wood, a scent that clung to the walls of her modest home in Willow Creek, Ohio. At 78, her hands were still steady, though the lines on her face told stories her lips rarely shared. The afternoon light slanted through the window, catching the dust motes dancing in the air. She held a cup of chamomile tea, the warmth seeping into her palms, grounding her as she waited for her son, Michael. Michael was late, as usual. Eleanor didn't mind the waiting. It gave her time to think. She thought about the years, how they'd slipped through her fingers like sand. She thought about her husband, Thomas, gone 10 years now, and how his laughter used to fill this very room. Most of all, she thought about Michael, her only child, who had grown from a boy with scraped knees and boundless dreams into a man she barely recognized. The front door creaked open, and Michael stepped inside, his polished shoes clicking against the hardwood. He was 45, tall and broad-shouldered, with the same dark eyes as his father, but none of Thomas's warmth. His suit was crisp, his tie a shade of blue that screamed corporate ambition. He carried a leather briefcase, a symbol of the world he'd chosen, one far removed from the small-town life Eleanor had built. "Mother," he said, his voice clipped as he set the briefcase down. "Sorry I'm late. Meeting ran long." Eleanor smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. "It's fine. Michael, sit. I made tea." He waved a hand, dismissing the offer, and settled onto the couch across from her. "I don't have much time. I need to talk to you about something important." Her fingers tightened around the teacup. She'd raised Michael to be direct, but his tone carried an edge that set her on guard. "What is it?" He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his gaze fixed on her with the intensity of a man closing a deal. "The house. Mother. It's time to sell it." Eleanor's breath caught, though she kept her face composed. This house, her home for 50 years, was more than brick and mortar. It was where she and Thomas had raised Michael, where they'd laughed and cried, where she'd planted roses that still bloomed every spring. Selling it was unthinkable. "Why?" she asked, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. Michael sighed, as if explaining something obvious to a child. "You're getting older. This place is too big for you to manage alone. And frankly, you don't need all this space. You'd be better off in a nice assisted living facility. I've found one in Columbus, operated. Modern. Everything you'd need." Eleanor set her teacup down, the clink against the saucer louder than she intended. "And the money from the sale. What's that for?" He hesitated, just a fraction of a second, but it was enough for her to notice. "It's for your care. Of course. Those places aren't cheap. But it's also practical. You don't need money. Mother. Not anymore. You've got your pension, your savings. The house is just sitting here, tying up value that could be put to better use." The words hit her like a slap. You don't need money. As if her life's worth could be reduced to a balance sheet. As if the home she'd poured her heart into was just an asset to liquidate. She studied her son, searching for the boy who used to cling to her skirt, who'd once promised to build her a castle when he grew up. That boy was gone. "I see," she said, her voice low. "And what's the better use? Michael. Your business. Your investments." His jaw tightened. "That's not the point. This is about what's best for you." Eleanor stood, her movements slow but deliberate, and walked to the window. Outside, the roses swayed in the breeze, their petals of vivid red against the green. She thought of the hours she'd spent tending them, of the love woven into every bloom. This house is my home. Michael. It's not just a thing to be sold. He stood too, his frustration palpable. You're being sentimental. You can't hold on to the past forever. I'm trying to make sure you're taken care of. Taken care of. She turned to face him, her eyes sharp. I've taken care of myself and you for a long time. I don't need you deciding what's best for me now. The room fell silent, the air thick with unspoken words. Michael ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like his father's that it made Eleanor's heart ache. Fine, he said at last. But don't expect me to keep bailing you out when the roof leaks or the taxes go up. You're choosing to make this harder than it needs to be. As he grabbed his briefcase and headed for the door, Eleanor's voice stopped him. Michael, she said, her tone calm but unyielding. If you think I don't need money, then maybe you don't need an inheritance. He froze, his hand on the doorknob. For a moment, she thought he might turn back, might say something to bridge the chasm between them. But he didn't. The door clicked shut behind him, and Eleanor was alone again, the weight of her words settling into the quiet. She returned to her armchair, her tea now cold. The house seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for her to decide its fate. Eleanor closed her eyes, her mind drifting to the past of the day she and Thomas moved in, to the nights they'd spent dreaming of the future. She'd built a life here, a legacy of love and resilience. If Michael couldn't see its value, that was his loss, not hers. But deep down, she knew this wasn't the end. Michael would be back, and the battle over the house was only beginning. For now, though, she let herself sit in the silence, drawing strength from the home that had always been her sanctuary. The next morning, Eleanor woke to the soft patter of rain against the windows. The sound was familiar, comforting, like an old friend whispering secrets. She rose early, as she always did, and made her way to the kitchen. The house creaked under her footsteps, each grown a reminder of its age and hers. She brewed coffee, the rich aroma filling the air, and sat at the small oak table where she'd shared countless breakfasts with Thomas and a young Michael. Her son's words from the day before echoed in her mind. You don't need money, Mother. They stung, not because they were cruel, but because they revealed how little Michael understood her. He saw her as a frail old woman, a burden to be managed, not the fierce, independent soul who'd raised him alone after Thomas's death. She sipped her coffee, letting the warmth steady her resolve. If Michael thought she'd surrender her home without a fight, he was mistaken. The rain stopped by mid-morning, and Eleanor donned her gardening gloves. The roses needed pruning, and the physical work would clear her mind. Outside, the air was damp, the earth soft beneath her boots. She knelt by the rose bushes, their thorns a quiet reminder of beauty's resilience. As she worked, her thoughts drifted to her childhood, to her own mother, who'd taught her that a woman's strength lay in her ability to endure and adapt. Eleanor had endured plenty. She'd worked as a schoolteacher for 30 years, shaping young minds while raising Michael. When Thomas died, she'd learned to manage the finances, the repairs, the loneliness. The house had been her partner in that journey, its walls bearing witness to her triumphs and tears. Selling it would be like selling a piece of her soul. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway broke her reverie. She stood, brushing dirt from her hands, and saw Michael's sleek black sedan. Her heart sank, but she squared her shoulders. He stepped out, this time in a more casual jacket, though his expression was no less determined. Mother, he called, striding toward her. Can we talk? She nodded, leading him to the porch where they could sit out of the damp. What's on your mind, Michael? He sat on the wicker chair, his hands clasped tightly. I thought about what you said yesterday. About the inheritance. You don't mean that. Eleanor met his gaze, unflinching. I meant every word. If you think my life's work is just money to be cashed out, then you don't understand what this house means to me, or what I've done for you. His face flushed, a mix of anger and guilt. I'm not trying to take anything from you. I'm trying to help. You're not getting any younger, and this place is falling apart. The roof needs replacing. The plumbing's ancient. You can't keep up with it. I've managed just fine, she said, her voice calm but firm. I've paid for every repair, every bill. Without your help, this house isn't falling apart, it's standing strong. Just like me. Michael leaned back, exhaling sharply. You're stubborn. You know that. Dad would have agreed with me. He'd want you to be safe, comfortable. Don't bring your father into this, Eleanor said, her tone sharp now. Thomas loved this house as much as I do. He'd never have asked me to give it up. The mention of Thomas seemed to unsteady Michael. He looked away, his jaw working as if chewing on words he couldn't say. Eleanor softened, just a fraction. She remembered the boy who'd cried when his father died, who'd clung to her for comfort. That boy was still in there, somewhere. Michael, she said gently, why does this matter so much to you? Tell me the truth. He hesitated, then met her eyes. My company, we're expanding. I need capital to secure a new contract. The house site's worth a lot. Mother, it could make a difference. There it was. The truth she'd suspected but hadn't wanted to hear. Her home, her memories. The porch fell silent, the weight of Michael's confession hanging between them like a storm cloud. Eleanor's heart twisted, not with surprise, but with a deep, aching disappointment. She had sensed his motives were tied to his ambitions. But hearing it aloud, knowing her home was just a means to an end cut deeper than she'd expected. She stood, her gardening gloves still clutched in one hand, and walked to the edge of the porch, staring out at the roses glistening with rain. So that's it, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You want to sell my home to fund your dreams. Michael stood, his face a mix of frustration and defensiveness. It's not like that, Mother. This is about building something bigger, something that'll last. I'm doing this for my family, too. For your grandchildren. Eleanor turned to face him, her eyes blazing with a fire that belied her age. Don't hide behind your family, Michael. This is about your pride, your need to prove yourself. You think I don't see it? You've been chasing your father's shadow your whole life, trying to be bigger than he ever was. His face paled, and for a moment, she thought she'd gone too far. But the truth had been bottled up too long, and she couldn't stop now. Your father was a good man, Michael. He didn't need a corner office or a fancy title to feel worthy. He built this home with me, not for money, but for love. For us. For you. Michael's hands clenched into fists, his voice low and strained. You think I don't know that? You think I don't wish I could be more like him? But I'm not. I'm trying to make something of myself, something I can pass down to my kids. Isn't that what you did for me? Eleanor's throat tightened. She saw the pain in his eyes, the weight of expectations he'd placed on himself. But she couldn't let his words sway her. What I did for you, she said, was give you a home, not a bank account. I gave you roots, Michael, a place to belong. Selling this house won't make you a better father. It'll just take away the one place your children can always come back to. He shook his head, pacing the porch like a caged animal. You don't understand. The market's hot right now. We could get top dollar for this place. Enough to set you up. To set my kids up. It's the smart move. Smart. She repeated, the word bitter on her tongue. You think love is a transaction, don't you? You think everything has a price. He stopped pacing, his eyes narrowing. And you think holding on to this house will bring Dad back? Or make me the son you wanted? You're living in the past. Mother. The word struck like a blade. But Eleanor stood tall, her voice steady. I'm not living in the past. Michael. I'm living my life. This house is my life. And if you can't see that, then you don't know me at all. Michael stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then, without another word, he walked to his car, the gravel crunching under his feet. As his sedan disappeared down the road, Eleanor sank into the wicker chair, her body trembling with a mix of anger and grief. Buffon. Eleanor sat alone on the porch, the wicker chair creaking softly beneath her. The rain had left the air cool and heavy, mirroring the weight in her chest. She stared at the empty driveway, her mind replaying the argument with Michael. His words had cut deep, but what hurt more was the truth in them. She wasn't trying to cling to the past, but she couldn't deny the ache of missing the man Thomas had been, the man who'd understood the value of home. Michael's ambition blinded him to that, and she wondered if she'd failed him somehow, if she'd let him drift too far from the values she and Thomas had tried to instill. She rose and walked to the garden, her hands brushing against the wet leaves of the roses. The thorns pricked her skin, a sharp reminder of the pain her son's words had caused. She'd always been proud of Michael's drive, his determination to build a life beyond the small world of Willow Creek. But somewhere along the way, that drive had turned into something colder, something that measured worth in dollars and deals. She knelt by the roses, clipping a wilted bloom, and whispered to herself, I didn't raise you to be this way. The phone rang as she returned to the house, the shrill sound cutting through the quiet. She hurried inside, her boots leaving faint mud tracks on the hardwood. It was Sarah, Michael's wife, her voice warm but tinged with worry. Eleanor, is everything okay? Michael came home last night upset. He wouldn't talk about it. Eleanor sighed, sitting at the kitchen table, her coffee now cold. We had a disagreement. Sarah. He wants to sell the house. I told him if he thinks I don't need money, then maybe he doesn't need an inheritance. Sarah gasped softly. Oh, Eleanor. I'm so sorry. He's been under a lot of pressure at work. This new contract is make or break for him. He's not himself right now. Eleanor's heart softened at the thought of Michael's stress, but she held firm. I understand, but this house is my life. He needs to respect that. I know, Sarah said, her voice gentle. I'll talk to him. The kids miss you. You know. They keep asking when they can visit Grandma's house. The mention of her grandchildren Lila, 8, and Tommy, 5, brought a lump to Eleanor's throat. The house was their sanctuary, too, a place of memories and love. She couldn't let it go, not even for Michael's sake. Tell them soon, she said. I'll make some cookies. After the call, Eleanor wandered through the house, her fingers trailing over the worn banister, the faded wallpaper, the scuffed floorboards. Each mark was a memory, a piece of her life with Thomas. She paused at a photo on the mantel, her and Thomas on their wedding day, young and radiant with hope. Michael had been born a year later. Their miracle, their pride. She'd never meant to push him away, only to teach him what mattered. By evening, the sky had cleared, and Eleanor sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the roses gold. She thought of Michael as a boy, running through the garden, laughing as Thomas chased him. Those days were gone, but the house held them close. She couldn't sell that, no matter what Michael needed. The doorbell rang, startling her. She opened the door to find Michael standing there, his face softer, uncertain. "Mother," he said, "can we try this again?" Eleanor's heart lifted, a flicker of hope igniting. She stepped aside, gesturing to the living room. "Come in, son. Let's talk." Eleanor led Michael to the living room, the familiar creak of the floorboards underfoot grounding her as she gestured to the couch. He sat, his posture less rigid than before, his dark eyes searching her face for something forgiveness, perhaps, or understanding. The air between them felt fragile, like a threadbare quilt ready to tear. "Michael," she began, her voice soft but steady, "I don't want to fight with you. This house, this life fight's not about money. It's about who we are." He nodded, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. "I know, Mother. I lost sight of that. Work's been consuming me. This contracted's everything I've been working for. I thought selling the house would solve everything. But I was wrong to push you." Eleanor's chest tightened. She saw the boy in him now, the one who'd once looked to her for guidance. "You've always been driven, Michael. Your father and I were so proud of that. But ambition doesn't mean sacrificing what matters. This house is your roots, your children's roots. It's where you learn to love, to dream." He looked down, his voice low. "I thought I was doing the right thing. For my family. For you. But I see now I was thinking like a businessman, not a son." She reached for his hand, her grip firm despite the years. "You're still my son, Michael. And I'm still your mother. We can fix this." His eyes glistened, and he squeezed her hand. "I don't want to lose you over this. I'm sorry, Mother. I'll find another way to fund the contract. The house stays." Eleanor's heart swelled, a warmth spreading through her like sunlight on the roses. She stood, pulling him into a hug, the first in years. He held her tightly, and for a moment, the chasm between them felt smaller. They sat together, talking late into the night, rebuilding what had been strained. Eleanor shared stories of Thomas, of the house, of the love that had shaped them both. Michael listened, his defenses down, his heart open. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The next morning, Eleanor woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of her grandchildren's laughter. Michael had brought Lila and Tommy over, their voices filling the house with life. They ran to her, arms wide, and she knelt, her heart full. The house was alive again, not with money, but with love. The days that followed were a quiet mending. Eleanor spent mornings baking cookies with Lila and Tommy, their small hands sticky with dough, their laughter a balm to her soul. The house, once a point of contention, became a haven again. Michael visited often, his briefcase left behind, his focus on family. He'd found another way to fund his contract, a loan he'd repay without touching the house. Eleanor felt pride, not in his deals, but in his heart. One afternoon, they all sat in the garden, the roses in full bloom, their scents sweet and heavy. Michael watched his children play, his eyes soft with a love Eleanor hadn't seen in years. "You were right, Mother," he said. "This place is worth more than money. It's home." Eleanor smiled, her hand resting on the arm of Thomas's old chair. "It's where we made you, Michael. Where you make your children. It's love, not legacy." He nodded, his voice thick. "I get it now. I'm sorry it took so long." She took his hand, her grip warm and steady. "You're here now? That's enough." The sunset painted the sky in hues of gold and crimson, bathing the roses in light. The house stood strong, its walls holding decades of memories, its heart beating with new ones. Eleanor watched her family, her eyes bright with tears she didn't hide. This was her inheritance, not money, but moments, love, and the home that held them all.